Okay, we are recording. Good morning, everybody. Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Today we're learning about Hilchot Chanukah. So Chanukah is the Chag of Torah Sheba'al Peh. So we don't have books. We have the Torah Sheba'al Peh. I have the sources in front of me. You don't have them in front of you, but hopefully everything will be clear. We'll talk a little bit about different halachot related to Chanukah and obviously lighting Chanukah candles. Just by way of introduction, I saw a beautiful piece this week in Rav Zevin, in his drashot, or Rav Moadim. So he says, we saw the parsha we just had, always Vayeshev Miketz. These are the parashot we read round about Chanukah time. Usually, nearly every year, last year was an exception. Nearly every year we read Miketz on Chanukah. Sometimes we read Vayeshev on Chanukah as well, or we read it before. And in Vayeshev we have the dreams. And we have the two dreams of Yosef. At the beginning, we have the dreams of the Sarah Mashkim and Sarafim at the end. But he also has two dreams which are seemingly contradictory, very, very different in nature. There is one dream about bundles of wheat. It doesn't get more earthly than that. It doesn't get more physical. You're talking about wheat. You're talking about the things that farming the land, right? And then the other dream is about the sun, the moon, the stars. In other words, there's one dream that's ba'aretz, and there's one dream that's b'shamayim. And really, the chiddush of Yosef is that the two are both sides of the same coin. Yaakov Avinu had one dream. But in his dream, there was a ladder, there was a sulam mutzav alza v'shor magia shamayma. And essentially, Yosef is coming with that dream split up into its two component parts. But we know we have both of those factors. We have that which is connected to the ground, that which is on the earth, that we have to work the land, and that we're living in this world. But all of that ultimately is for the sake of that which is bashamayim, for the sake of spirituality, for the sake of raising things up. And Rav Zevin says we connect this to Chanukah. There is a halacha, which we won't discuss today. There's a machloket about Chanukah candles. Is it hadlaka usa mitzvah or hanacha usa mitzvah? Is it the fact that when you light the candles or where you place the candles? So the nafkamina for this would be, for example, if a person lit the Chanukah candles in a place which is incorrect, in a place which is not valid, above 20 amot or whatever it is, and then you move the candle somewhere else. If we say hanacha osa mitzvah, so that's fine. But if we say hadlaka osa mitzvah, you would have to extinguish and place them again. So it says Rav Zevin, the same idea. Hanacha, placing something firmly on the ground. It's that which is connected to that which is earthly, that which is worldly. Hadlaka is about lighting the lights. It's something which is more spiritual, something which is more up there, which is less tangible. We can't necessarily put our finger on it. And that is essentially in the days of Chanukah, in the days of the Milchama. We have the Milchama, you're fighting a physical battle, but there are also spiritual ideas and behind it. And ultimately, we need both. Ultimately, we can't have one without the other. That's the message of the two dreams, but it's the Hadlaka Usa Mitzvah. At the end of the day, it's the ideas, it's spiritual, it's raising things up. It's what it's all about and what we're fighting for and what we're living for. So that's an idea that he brings that's related to Chanukah. And with that, let's talk about some of the halachot. I'm not going to discuss this morning about where to light Chanukah candles. We're discussing that between Mincha and Mariv. People have specific questions. I'm happy to address those if we have time or afterwards. But let's start off. Let's talk a little bit about when we light Chanukah candles. And there's very, very interesting discussion, lots of interesting machlokot that come up related to this. And this has changed. This has changed a lot from the days of the Gemara. We spoke during the week, Mincha Mariv, about how when you look at where to light Chanukah candles, it's very complicated because in the Gemara there's a certain setting, a certain layout of how people used to live, and Chazal couldn't have imagined. Chazal tell us above 20 amot you can't light Chanukah candles. They couldn't have imagined that you'd be living on the 13th floor in Diskin and with the Shabbos elevator or not, whatever. That wasn't a reality that existed. So where do we light? It becomes very complicated. In the days of Chazal, you had a chatzer. You go into Nachlaot and you go into Me'asharim and you see that you have a chatzer, you have a courtyard, the houses around or surrounding it. So do you light at the entrance to your house or the entrance to the courtyard? What if you live on the top story? Okay, how do we translate that into modern buildings is complicated. But also in terms of the time for lighting Chanukah candles, so things have changed a lot. So, and we'll see how that affects. When Chazal tell us, the time you can light your candles is while people are still out and about. In the days of Chazal, when were people out and about? When it got dark, everybody ran home because you've got wild animals, you've got bandits, you've got whatever it is, listim v'chayot ra'ot, right on the street. Nowadays, we used to live in Nachlaot. We used to live right opposite the shuk. So everybody used to joke, Chanukah, you really know when it is. So back then, Okay, it was about 8, 9 o'clock, whatever. Nobody was there. Nowadays, go to Shuk Machanei Yehuda, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, right? People are still there; they're just coming. So we'll see if that affects the halacha as well. So essentially, the Gemara, the basis we have for this, the Gemara Masechet Shabbat, it says mitzvata, right? The mitzvah of lighting the Hanukkah candles is misha tishka chama ad shetichle regel min hashuk. All right, the Kashla Gemara, it's very, very short in words over here. How much ink has been spilled throughout the generations of those 4 words? Right, the time of lighting candles is misha tishka chama, from the time that the sun sets. Not at all simple to define exactly what that means. That's the beginning time to light until ad shetichle regel min hashuk. So this is a very, very interesting phrase. We don't find this anywhere else. Normally we talk about shkiat hachama or alot hashachar. What's this? Ad shetichle regel min hashuk, until there's no one left in the marketplace. The Sfat Emet, by the way, says, you have to have a little bit of Hasidus on a Sunday morning. So the Sfat Emet says in the name of his grandfather, Chidushei Arim, he says, don't read it, Shetichle regel min hashuk, but Shetichle haregel min hashuk, Shetichle hergel. The word regel means legs, but literally means habit. We do so much out of habit. We do so much out of rote. We don't think about what we're doing or where we're going or how we're living. He says, when you have the time, the Chanukah candles, there's a minhag not to do malacha, for women not to do malacha during the time that the Hanukkah candles are lit. There's no obligation necessarily to sit and watch the candles, but many people have the custom, and it's a beautiful custom. The family sits together, sits by the candles, put away the phones, you put away everything else, and at least for that half an hour, time to stop, to think, to be together, be present, and think about what we're doing, and not just let things go by habit. So that's how the Sfat Emet says, hergel min hashuk. But in any event, so that is the time frame the Gemara tells us, from the time of sunset until there's no one left in the marketplace. So the first machloket that we have, the first discussion, we'll talk about the earliest time to light, and then the latest time to light, and also how long the candles have to be lit. Those are the three separate questions. So when do we begin? So when we say Nisha Tishka Chama, seemingly that means what? Sunset, right? Shkia. Now we know, we're learning in Hilchot Shabbat as well, and it's very complicated to define as well. But we have when the sun begins to set, we have Shkia, and then we have nightfall, which is Tzeit Kochavim, right? And the time in between is called Bein Hashmashot. So when it comes to Hilchot Shabbat and it comes to Ad Halachot, we view Bein Hashmashot, the time between sunset and nightfall, that is inherently a doubtful time. That is a safek. We don't know if it's day, we don't know if it's night, and we have to be machmir for both opinions. And that's why on Shabbat, right, Friday, when Shabbat comes in, we say, since Bein Hashmashot might still be considered at night, so we have to accept Shabbat before Shkia. When Shabbat goes out, since Bein Hashmashot might be day, we can only take Shabbat out after Tzeit HaKochavim. That's the time. But when we say Misha Tishka Chamas, people said, yeah, it sounds like it's saying Shkia, but we have these 2 times, and it's not clear when the Gemara refers to sunset. Does it mean sunset when it starts to get dark, or does it mean when it's already dark, when it's Tzeit HaKochavim? Okay, and that's going to be a machloket. Why would we say, what's the difference between, why would we say, on the one hand, maybe Shkia, or maybe Tzeit HaKochavim? So the Sefer Yereim, who's one of the Rishonim, says something very interesting over here. He says, I'll read you his language. He understands that Shkiat HaChama means Shkia, means sunset. He says, Be'oto zman, matchilim b'nei adam lashuv levatehem. This is the time that people start going home. Those days it was, maybe today they're out a lot later, but except for Hanukkah, because on Hanukkah everybody comes home early to light candles, right? School finishes early and Gan finishes early, and the Ganenan has to get home at 12 in the afternoon to light candles at 4. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. So, but in those days, right, they would say when it's getting dark, that's when they would go home. People find it very tamua, it's very strange when they see the candles. I'm going to say, when do you light candles? You light candles at night. When it's dark, what do you light a candle in the day for? The Gemara Pesachim talks about B'dikat Chametz, and we do B'dikat Chametz with a candle. And we have to do B'dikat Chametz at night, because you're going to go around in the day with a candle. The Gemara says, well, what's that? You can't, it doesn't help you. So he says, Matmim shilim nel ba'od hayom, v'yod'im shechamat mitzvah v'yika pirsumei nisa. Okay, you see somebody's lit a candle during the day, you're going to say, what? He doesn't need it for the light. Obviously, it's for a mitzvah. Obviously, it's for Hanukkah, and therefore it's Pirsumei Nisa. So in other words, everybody agrees that the Hanukkah candles are lit at night because you don't have a candle during the day. But we would say like this, that according to the opinion that says we start at Shkia, we dafka start before it gets dark, because that way it's more recognizable that the candle is for the sake of a mitzvah, not for the sake of light. The opinion that says we're going to wait until Tzeit HaKochavim, not actual Shkia, is going to say, no, it's still daytime. You still can't recognize the candle. The whole point here is Pirsume Nisa. We want the most people to see it as possible. Again, all the halachot, where we light, when we light, how we light, how many we light, everything is related to Pirsume Nisa, publicizing the miracle. So you're publicizing the miracle more when people can see it. That's the opinion that says Tzeit HaKochavim. So this is a machloket in the Rishonim. We have Tosfot on the one hand who says that Yesh Lizer La'adlik Balayla Miyad, i.e. it's he says Balayla. Balayla seems to say Tzeit HaKochavim. That's when it's already night. You have the Ran, you have other Rishonim who say no, it's actually Shkia. And again, based on the language of the Gemara, it says Misha Tishka HaChama. It sounds more like it means sunset Shkia. The Shulchan Aruch writes as follows. At the end of the day, this is going to be a machloket Sfaradim and Ashkenazim primarily, although within the Ashkenazi poskim there is a machloket as well. So the Shulchan Aruch says, Ein madlikin ner Chanukah kodem shetishka chama, ela im sof shkiata lo machlim velo makdimin. In other words, he says, we don't light Chanukah candles before Shkia, we light it at the end of Shkia. The end of Shkia meaning nightfall, Tzeit HaKochavim. That is the Shulchan Aruch. The Mishnah Berurah brings a few different opinions. He brings the Gra, the Gaon of Vilna, who says that no, actually we light earlier, we light at Shkia. As I said, amongst Ashkenazi poskim it's machloket. So bottom line, when do we begin to light Chanukah candles? According to the Shulchan Aruch, according to most of the Sfaradi poskim, only at nightfall. For the Ashkenazi poskim, there is a machloket. Some say at nightfall, and some say earlier already from Shkia. Okay. The next question which comes up, people say, is what about when do you daven Mariv? Okay, so essentially, if you have a fixed time for davening Mariv, we have a principle. We say Tadir, Ve'no Tadir, Tadir Kodem. Something which is more frequent. We daven Mariv every day. We light Chanukah candles only once a year, 8 times a year, right? For the 8 days. So therefore, if you have a fixed time to daven Mariv, you're davening at 5 o'clock. Right, and shul just after Shkia when you normally do. So you come to shul, you daven first, and then you go home and you light candles. If a person is going to daven later, right, 8 o'clock, 7, 8, 10, whatever. So then obviously then one would light at the time. The Mishnah Berurah also points out that if your minhag is, even if your minhag is to light at not Tzeit HaKochavim, even to light at Shkia, but you're going to daven Mariv first, that's okay. But you should prepare everything before, and you should prepare the wicks and the oil so that not to cause unnecessary delay when it comes time to light. Now, in terms of how long the candles have to be lit. So here's an interesting.
So we hold that's what we hold. That's what the Gra holds. We follow the Gra's opinion.
The Gra goes, he says the Shal Bashkia, right? So
does it earlier.
About Bashkia, Bashkia, not Tzeit HaKochavim. Yeah. So okay, so there are people who will go and light earlier, and then we'll specifically come and daven Mariv afterwards. But again, there's room for both of those minhagim. Okay, now how long do the candles have to be lit? We'll see. We'll go back to the Gemara in a moment, but we generally understand from the Gemara that it's about half an hour. The time from Misha Tishka Chama Ad Shtichlei Yom Hashuk, we assume that to be about half an hour. So, if you're lighting from Tzeit HaKochavim, you need to have enough oil in the candles that it's going to light for another half an hour after Tzeit HaKochavim. If you're lighting from Shkia, then it becomes a bit more complicated. Do we say half an hour from the time you're lighting, or do we say half an hour from Tzeit HaKochavim? So that would be more or less an extra 20 minutes. So the Mishnah Berurah says that it's better to light for half an hour until after Tzeit HaKochavim. Even if you light earlier at Shkia, you need enough oil in the candles that's going to be lit for 50 minutes, not 30 minutes. Why does he say that? It could be that we are concerned for the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch that says you're actually meant to start lighting later. Or it could be that even if you light earlier, but there's an understanding the time period is not half an hour, it's a little bit longer. Now, where this comes up, if you use the cups of oil or use olive oil, generally it's not a problem. You have enough oil in there for an hour, 2 hours, a lot longer. If you get, the boxes of candles, oftentimes for the kids, or we have those, so those are half an hour and no more. So if you're using those candles, where it becomes a problem is on Erev Shabbat. Right, on Erev Shabbat, we obviously have to light a lot earlier. We certainly can't wait until Tzeit HaKochavim, not even till Shkia, because we have to light Shabbos candles, we have to bring in to Sefer Shabbat, so we light earlier on Erev Shabbat. So that's fine. But one has to ensure that there's enough oil in the candles that it's going to light for that extra period. So the boxes with the colored candles, those are not sufficient on Erev Shabbat, particularly in Yerushalayim where we light a little bit early. I'll just say the minhag generally in Yerushalayim is we light candles 40 minutes before Shkia. Right? Everywhere else it's usually 18 or 20. Okay, if you're running a bit late, so then right, but that's when the siren goes off, right? The good siren that we have, not the bad sirens.
That's but the taxis are busy.
That's right. Exactly. But one is not required on Erev Chanukah to go before the 40 minutes. Within the 40 minutes, that's the time, and we can light candles a little bit later, so long as it's well before Shkia. That's fine. Yeah.
So there's two issues. One, the colored candles, if it's windy outside, they're gonna go out in 10 minutes. So it's preferable to light them inside, I believe. It makes sense because you're not gonna last a half hour.
So we spoke.
Protected.
What's not gonna light?
Those little candles.
But the kids light, not.
Oh, the kids like they don't even light inside, they don't last a half hour.
No,
They're just for the shot to light the shamas.
If we spoke about if you're lighting outside, so generally speaking, the Aruch HaShulchan, right? It's very interesting that we have these boxes, these glass boxes which you light inside because there's going to be wind. That's and that's the only way. When you light inside the box, then it's generally okay. The Aruch HaShulchan actually says, all right, in Chutz La'aretz, it's almost unheard of to light outside. I don't know how it is in America, but in England, nobody lights outside. Everybody lights inside. And the Aruch HaShulchan writes, he says, if we were going to make everybody light outside, it's cold and it's snow and it's wet, and we would have to make everybody get one of these boxes. And that's such a tircha to go and to get a glass box, so we don't have to do that. We light inside. That's what he writes. But if you're lighting in a place where there's wind and the candles cannot last for half an hour, they're definitely going to go out. So then you have to light somewhere else where they won't extinguish. Yeah.
You said that one person should light outside, ideally cut a box, but then somebody should perhaps light inside for the light for the family. And then another question is, we always had our kids, those colored candles. We didn't, but is that okay?
Okay, so the first question, I didn't say that, but I'm not talking about now where to light because that's a whole sugya in itself, and maybe we can discuss at the end. But that's what. But in terms of kids lighting, okay, if a kid that are under bar mitzvahs, they're not actually obligated in the mitzvah. It gives within chinuch. Then we're not going to be as concerned about how long it lasts for. If the kids are a little bit older and they really understand the mitzvah,
I'm not doing it to be also the mitzvah.
No.
About look is there.
If they're
child, 6 years old.
yeah, correct, yeah, exactly. So that's not that's why we make the colored candles. That's what they're there for.
That's right.
They make a pattern every night, then you get to the last night, you're missing the color.
And the duration, because the whole idea of pursuing this. So if you light the candles at Shkia, and people walking by, if who's coming home from work, getting dark, day's over. You can see the candles and you perform the mitzvah. So what difference does it make if it extends it another half hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? What's the purpose?
Okay, so let's talk about it now. Again, the basis for this is we have to go back. We have to get into the mindset of the days of the Gemara. The days of the Gemara is the idea is you can light from the time we'll see right now. But you can light from the time it starts getting dark until people aren't walking around anymore. In the days of the Gemara, that is half an hour after nightfall or half an hour after Shkia. That's it. After that point, our assumption is no one is out at night. The only people that are out at night are people like Ben Drosai, right? The bandits that are going out and chasing after the animals or whatever. So Pirsumei Nisa is only at that time. If it's beyond that time, the assumption is no one's going to see it. So now you're asking a different question. You're saying nowadays, we're not in the days of the Gemara anymore. Again, you've got until 2 a.m. People are still going to see it. So can you still light your candles until 2 a.m? That's what we'll discuss right now. So I misunderstand your question.
The duration.
Yes.
In other words, as long as you lit the candles and part of it's during the time when people are outside, which can be 6, 7 o'clock. What can this make whether it extends for until 10 o'clock?
More Sumer Nisa.
No, but I'm saying once you've done the part of Sumer Nisa, Does it make a difference
There's
whether
no
2 people see it
first
or whether 100 people see it?
Are you asking how long the candles have to be lit for?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is going to depend. There's two answers that are given in the Gemara, and it's going to depend on which answer we accept. So we saw the Gemara said mitzvata mishtishka achama ad shtichle regel min hashuk. So now the Gemara says something like this. It says the following. It says my love the ikapta hadar madlikla, meaning the Gemara is asking, why do you have to tell me the beginning time and the end time? I mean, if you had just said, when do we light Hanukkah candles? Then I would understand. But it says you have to light from Mishtishka Chama ad shetichle regel min hashuk. So that sounds like you're saying the candle has to be lit for that entire time, that duration. So the Gemara says like this. It says, first of all, we have a sugya, what's called kafta in azakukla, which is if your candles go out, right? I light the candles and it went up, but whatever reason it goes out, not circumstances beyond my control. Do I have to go back and relight it? So the Gemara says maybe that's what it means when it says from Shkia until Shtichle Regel Min Hashuk, and then it says no, it's not that. That's a separate sugya. Forget about that. That's not what we're discussing. But why does the Gemara give both of those times? Two possibilities. Possibility number one is to say the ilo adlik madlik, meaning if you didn't light at Shkia, you've got any time until Ad Shtichle Regel Min Hashuk. That's the time that you can start lighting. So long as people are still going to see it, that's when I can start lighting. How long the candles have to be for? According to this, I don't know. It's not discussed. Or, says the Gemara, inami l'shiura. Alternatively, it's coming to tell me that what's the shiur? How long does it have to be lit? So the answer is it has to be lit for half an hour. But when can I light? Only from Shkiat HaChama. So depending on, so we have two different answers in the Gemara. One said, why does it say the time for lighting is from time A until time B? Possibility number one is it saying the time you can start lighting is anywhere from A to B, anywhere within this period of until Ad Shtichle Regel Min Hashuk. Okay, and that would mean if nowadays Ad Shtichle Regel Min Hashuk is much later, would seem to imply that we can start lighting much later. Okay, but maybe that's not what the Gemara meant. Maybe what it meant is you have from time A to time B, meaning you have to start lighting at A, but the candles have to be lit for this period of half an hour. So if you missed it at the time, you had to start lighting, you've missed it, you're too late, and you have to light on time. If we accept the second terutz of the Gemara, then this would be very, very machmir. Would say, you don't light in that time, Shkia, Tzeitek Chavim, you've missed the mitzvah. Okay, so how do we paskin? On this? And then a question is all sorts of practical questions nowadays, which is when people come home very late, how are you going to light? Or let's say we go out, people don't want to leave the candles lit at home because it's a fire hazard, which is a fair and reasonable thing, right? You're going out for a Hanukkah party, you're leaving halfway in the afternoon, you're only getting back late at night. What do? We discussed last week, by the way, that if I go to a Hanukkah party at my parents' house or my kids' house or the grandkids or wherever it is, it's not my house and I'm not sleeping there, then I have no obligation to light candles there. It's very nice. Everybody wants to stand around and different people light the candles and sing the songs, but it's not your house. It's not your obligation. You still have to light when you get home. So, and if you're only getting home late, what do? Alternatively, question which comes up is if one of the, let's say husband and wife, and one of them is at work, and comes or is out and only comes home later, and the other member and the kids are at home at the time of Hanukkah of Shkia and Tzeitek Chavim, is it better to light the candle with only part of the household, or is it better to wait until later and light so everyone can light together? Okay, we'll see that as well. So the Shulchan Aruch writes like this. Shulchan Aruch says, "Shachach o izid v'lo edlikim shkiat hachama." Right. Remember, according to Shulchan Aruch, we light at Shkia. He says, what happens? A person forgot, or a person was unable to, or whatever reason, did not light at Shkia. Madlik v'olech ad shtichle regel min hashuk. Okay, until the time of regel min hashuk, for that half an hour, you can still go and light. That is the time when people are still walking around, people are still out and about, and therefore there is still pirsum hanes, and that's fine. Therefore, you need enough oil that it's going to last for this period of time. Okay, if you had in those days, you don't have enough oil for all the nights, and oil is very expensive, so you want to extinguish it after half an hour. He says you could do that. Okay, and you can benefit from the light after the minimum time of fulfilling the mitzvah has passed. All of this is ideally. This is lekatchila. Aval, im aval ze azman velo edlek. But if that time has passed, now it's past regular min hashuk, it's past that first half an hour or hour, and people are not out and about anymore. He says, nonetheless, madlik volech kol halayla. You can still b'diavad, you can still light the entire night. Okay, if the night passes and you didn't light, there's no tashlumin. We have a concept by tefillah. Person missed the tefillah, the next tefillah you can make it up. Tashlumin. A person was unable to daven shachrit, you daven mincha twice. You daven mariv twice. Once you get to the next one afterwards, then you can't make it up anymore. Says there's no tashlumin for Hanukkah candles. You missed the night. That's it. So that's the Shulchan Aruch. So the Shulchan Aruch says you should be very, very careful to light at the beginning of the night. But if a person missed it, you can still light later. The Rama is a bit more mekonos. He says yesh omrim shebizman hazeh shemadlikim bifnim ein tzarich lezeh ladlik kodem shetichle regel min hashuk. He says nowadays there's a difference. Okay, well, before we get to the fact that people are out later, long before we get to that, the difference is the Gemara said initially we want to light outside because it's pirsum hanes. But then we had a shata sakana. Different opinions what a shata sakana is, but there was a danger. We weren't allowed to light outside. So they said you light inside. You light inside the house. Originally, you were meant to light outside so as many people as possible could see. Now it's dangerous for anybody else to see. So the only people that are going to see are inside the house. It's Bnei Abayit. So he says if you're lighting inside, pirsum hanes, who's the pirsum hanes to? It's only to the people that are living in the home. So I don't care if there's anybody outside. Right, they're not going to see the candles anyway. He says, therefore, you could light inside, and you could light much later. Right? Yesh omrim bezan hazeh shemadlikim bifnim, ein tzarich lezeh ladlik kodem shetichle regel min hashuk, u'mikom makom tov lezeh gam bizman hazeh. He says, nonetheless, that's still the appropriate time. Lekatchila, you should light earlier if you can. So that's the Shulchan Aruch and the Rama. Just to summarize, again, everybody agrees we should light based on the time the Gemara said, whether it's Shkiat HaChama or Teta Kochavim. But there are a number of reasons here why we can be lenient in terms of lighting a little bit later if a person missed that time. First of all, we said according to the Gemara, it was only according to the first explanation that said you have to light early. According to the second explanation that said that it gives us the cutoff time. It's not actually a cutoff time, it's just a measurement of how much oil you need, and therefore you could light whenever you want, you could light the whole night. Number one. Number two, there are those who say, the Rashba, for example, says that when the Gemara says you have to light at this time, as the Shulchan Aruch said, he said it's lekatchila, but b'diavad, you can light the whole night, as the Shulchan Aruch said. Also, we saw that Pirsume, the reason you have to light early is because of Pirsume Nisa, and what we saw is that nowadays, we have lots of room to suggest that Pirsum Nisa is not just for the people outside, but it's the people that are inside. It's for the Bnei Abayit as well. And then you could light later. Where this wouldn't apply, let's say a person lights their candles outside. So if you're lighting your candles outside and it's very late at night and the family's awake, but they're inside and they're not going to see the candles, so then obviously that's a problem. In such a situation, you'd have to, everybody should sit outside and have a donut late at night, sit by the candles, etc. But really, the other reason, which we alluded to earlier, is that all of this is explained to us why b'diavad I can pass the time of Ad Shetichle Regel Min Hashuk. But nowadays, if the time Ad Shetichle Regel Min Hashuk is much, much later, people certainly, 7, 8 at night, people are still out and about, even 10 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock, depending where you live. And therefore, there's a lot of room to suggest that one could light later at night. Certainly, b'diavad, we have what to rely on. The other question,
because of Priscilla and Lisa,
it
would be better for the wife to light for the house, whoever that might consist of, and when the husband comes home at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, so very well could be. We'll get to that in a minute. You're saying if the husband's not there at the time.
Because of consumerism, the wife should make the problem. And the child is if the husband has to even buy the candle. Because it's on the house, it's not.
Yeah, fair. Okay, so that. So the second point, that's clear. That's agreed by everybody. Meaning, if the wife is at home and lights the candles, and the husband's not there, and he's fulfilled his mitzvah. It's chovat habayit, narish habeito. So that's fine. So the question is, what's the
for the wife? if the kids are gonna go to sleep and if the family
Yeah,
is gonna go
yeah.
away, it would be best for the wife to light
Yeah,
it.
so I would say it depends. We're going to get to that, but it depends on what time the husband's going
I
to come.
would say that, I'm sorry, just say.
So let's say it like this. I'll tell you. I'll tell you what. You can say that outside. It's okay. But the question. Let's distinguish. Let's distinguish between three scenarios. Let's distinguish between the three scenarios as follows. Okay, we missed the lighting at the early time, whatever it is. Okay, so it's a little bit later. So let's say scenario number one, it's 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, whatever it is. It's later, but there are still people around outside. Okay, so then you can light that with the bracha at that time. There's no question. What if it's later and there are no people outside? Okay, but you still have people inside and the whole family is awake and everything. So then you can still light a candle with a bracha. There's no problem. What if it's really late? Okay, there's nobody outside and everybody at home is sleeping. Then can you light? So that's the scenario which we would say, lechatchila, we should avoid that. Okay, there are other ways. Even then, I'll tell you, even in the Mishnah Berurah writes, he says if it's late at night and no one of the Bnei, but obviously the person who's lighting is going to be awake because somebody has to light the candles. Okay, if everyone's sleeping, there's no question. But he says there we have a machloket. If I'm not mistaken, it's machloket between the Magen Avraham and the Chemed Moshe to the Achronim, and the Mishnah Berurah says you shouldn't say a bracha in that case. You can light the candles without a bracha. The language he uses, he says ein mochin beyadam. He says we don't protest against somebody who still lights there with a bracha. Again, and the reason is Pirsumanes may be for the person who's lighting. The reason is that since this whole sugya of shata sakana, and we see some people are lighting inside and not lighting outside, what we see from there is that there's there's a disconnect between the Pirsumanes and the mitzvah. Meaning, do we say that the mitzvah is inherently connected to Pirsumanes, that without Pirsumanes there's no mitzvah? Or do we say that Pirsumanes is one of the details, it's a nice thing, it's a hidur, but if you don't have it, you still have the mitzvah. Okay, so depending on how we view that. So therefore he says, b'diavad, somebody who said it with a bracha, that's okay. It's an interesting question which came up. Rav Tzvi Reisman has Ratzke Tzvi, has many volumes of halacha. One of the things he discusses there, he says, what about, could there be Pirsumanes via Zoom? Right, let's say you come home late and everybody's asleep, no one's going to see it, but you can go on Zoom, especially people are in America or whatever it is, it's still earlier for them or people are awake, so I can light my candles and then somebody else is going to see it. So, I mean, based on what we've said, it's difficult to say. It's difficult to say definitively that counts, like people walking outside. But if there's room to suggest that even if no one's going to see it, that you could still say it with a bracha, so then you can, there's water line maybe to add that in. But the bottom line is, late at night, no one else is going to see it. It's better not to get into that situation. It's better. So what should you do? So if there's somebody at home earlier, right, then they should light the candles there and then at the right time, and that's fine. The other thing is,
if you live by yourself, well, you're a bachelor or widower. There's no one's late. It's late at night. Say with a bracha.
So we say there is so that's exactly the machlokes. There is what to rely on to say with a bracha in that situation as well. What?
You're living in Oregon somewhere, and you're all on your own. There's no light for 40 miles around. There's no Pirsumanes for even at the right time.
Right. So there you have a question whether there's no one around anyway, so whether there's not going to be any Pirsumanes, so then it doesn't make a difference.
You're not close there.
That I agree. You're the Chabad shaliach, okay? Oh, he said Chabad will light anywhere and they'll say a bracha, so that's fine. So then you're okay. But yeah.
The candle. So let's say you're waiting and the husband's not home, the kids are cranky, blah blah blah. Or it's very, very late. Should you wait until very, very late? So
I'll say it like this. Again, if it depends what very, very late is. If very, very late means when everyone's going to be asleep, then you should certainly not wait. You should light earlier. If very late means a bit later, but it's still within the time that everybody says. So here's an interesting point which some of the poskim raise. We have a discussion, right? Shabbat, you have Ner Shabbat and Ner Chanukah. The Rambam writes, the Gemara talks about this. If a person only has enough money, it's a situation we can't imagine today, but the principle we learn from. A person only has enough money to buy one candle. So, and it's Friday. So either you can use it for a Shabbos candle or you can use it for a Chanukah candle. What should it be? We know, by the way, a person's so poor, they can't even afford Hanukkah candles. We don't say this by Shabbat, but we say this by Hanukkah. A person's so poor, they can't afford Hanukkah candles. They have to borrow. They have to sell the clothes off their back to get oil for Hanukkah candles. But if you only have one, which takes preference, Hanukkah or Shabbat, so you'll say it's Hanukkah, it comes once a year. No, says the Gemara, now Shabbat Kodem, Mishum Shalom Bayit, because of Shalom Bayit. That's a Ner Beito Adif. So therefore, there are those, especially if the husband or the wife or whoever really, wants to be a part of it and wants to be, again, it's not going to be 12 at night. It's going to be 6, 7, whatever, and then it's important to do with the whole family. So there is room to say, we'll wait till a little bit later and you'll light together, Mishum Shalom Bayit. But again, in that scenario, one way or the other, one is still fulfilled the mitzvah, and that is okay. If it's going to be much later at night, then we would say you should not wait.
My wife, stopping my wife's question. If your husband's at work late and it's 10 o'clock and he's hungry, right? But he can't get home yet. Are you allowed to eat before you, or is it just preferable?
Yeah, so I don't think we haven't found to the same degree. There are certain mitzvot. Whenever we get to the time of davening or kriyat shema, etc., you get half an hour before. We shouldn't engage in certain activities, like a kriyat Megillah, for example. If a person is this year in Yerushalayim, we get to experience what everybody outside Yerushalayim experiences every year, which is you have the Megillah straight after the fast. Normally we have it the day later, but because this year it's Purim Mishulash, and so we will in Yerushalayim read the Megillah on the same day as everybody else. So there we say you shouldn't eat and you shouldn't do certain things. Generally speaking, we would say if one has safeguards in place, you have a reminder, you have someone who's going to tell you, and you're not going to miss the mitzvah. So then we can circumvent that quite easily. So in a case like this, there's a reminder, everybody knows you're going to go home and light the candles, then that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, and one other thing in terms of the timing of lighting. What about lighting? We spoke about how late one can light. What about how early one could light? Sometimes scenarios are a person's not going to be home at night. Would it be better to light even before Shkia, even from Plag HaMincha? So certainly before Plag HaMincha, you cannot light. Plag HaMincha is the time, an hour and a quarter in Shot Zmanion before Shkia. That is the earliest time. According to some opinions in the Gemara, that is already maybe nightfall, maybe not necessarily night, but it's the time halachically, right? We can start davening Mariv. If we accept early Shabbat, Plag HaMincha is the earliest time that you can do it. Could one light Hanukkah candles from that time? So we know that on Friday, on Erev Shabbat, you have to light candles before Shkia, right? That is from Plag HaMincha. The question is that just an allowance because it's on Shabbat and Ein Lanu Brera, there's nothing else that we can do? Or would we say that, throughout the week, certainly not Lekatchila, but it may be that this question came up for Chayalim, for example, right? And all sorts of scenarios whereby, obviously, if it's going to be danger and it's going to be a sakanat nefashot, so then they'd be exempt and they wouldn't have to light. But there's all sorts of stories, and Chayalim want to know they can't light at night. They'll have to extinguish the candles. The terrorists will know where they are. Could they light beforehand from Plag HaMincha, etc.? So according to the Rambam, it's only Erev Shabbat. Only Erev Shabbat that we're allowed to light Plag HaMincha. Other times we cannot. But the Shulchan Aruch does say, he says, Yesh mi she'omer. There is an opinion. Imu tahud yachol laktim mi plag hamincha u'lemala, that one could light earlier, bilvad, she'iten v'shemen ad shtichle rega min hashuk. Again, as we said regarding Erev Shabbat, one needs to make sure there's enough oil that is going to last until later. But in a b'diavad circumstance, that is one way that one could fulfill the mitzvah from lighting earlier if one can't light later. Okay, just a couple more points about Shabbat in terms of the timing. So we mentioned Erev Shabbat that you need to make sure there's enough oil in the candles to carry on. When does one light Shabbat? When does one light Hanukkah candles? And this is a question on Friday. It's a question on Motzei Shabbat as well. So on Friday we'd have to light obviously before Shabbat candles. When we said now Shabbat, now Beito Adif, doesn't mean you light it first. You light it afterwards, because once you've lit Shabbat candles, you can't light Hanukkah candles because it's now Shabbat. So that's pretty straightforward, that you have to light the Hanukkah candles first. What about Mincha? Okay, so again, once we've lit Hanukkah candles are for that night. So it would be Tarta de Satra. You're going to light your Hanukkah candles. You have to do it before nightfall because there's no other option. But once I've lit the Hanukkah candles, that goes by the night. And now to daven mincha, which goes to the day before, that seems a little bit strange. So that is why we try and have a early minyan, right? So it's difficult because it's already a short Shabbat, but we have an earlier minyan for mincha, so you daven mincha first and then light your candles. But if a person wasn't able to, and there was a person didn't daven mincha, so it should still daven mincha after lighting candles, but it's far, far, far preferable to do it beforehand. Okay, then the question comes up: what about Motzei Shabbos? Right, so what do you do with Havdalah? And the truth is that there are reasons why to light candles before Havdalah, and there are reasons to light after Havdalah. The most simple is the same as we said on Erev Shabbat. If it's still Shabbat, I can't light candles. So if I haven't yet made Havdalah, it seems a little bit strange. First, I'm going to light Chanukah candles, but it's still, obviously, if one would do that, one would have to say, Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'chol. The truth is that we do Havdalah, right? We discussed it previously, but when we daven Mariv on Motzei Shabbat, and we add in Atachon and Tanu, that is Havdalah. That is Havdalah. Is on the, afterwards, Rabbanan came along and established, not enough to say Havdalah with words, you have to do Havdalah ala kos as well. You have to do it with a cup of wine. And the Gemara goes through how there were different periods. At first, at one point, they said you have to do it with a cup of wine. Then they said you don't have to do it. And then they said you do have to do it. Why? Because it wasn't available. It was very, very expensive. Not everybody could afford to have a cup of wine on Motzei Shabbat. So they said you can do it without the cost. And then the Gemara says they established it, that we do it in tefillah and we do it with the cost as well. We aren't going to now start every time, looking at the stock market and deciding whether we have to have a cup of wine or don't have to have a cup of wine. So therefore, we keep it as part of tefillah and we keep it as part of Havdalah afterwards as well. But once one has said Havdalah and tefillah, so then one's allowed to do malacha. Chachamim said you can't eat yet. You can only eat until you've done Havdalah lakos. But you could perform malacha. So person's daven Mariv, or if they aren't davening Mariv and they've said Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'chol, right, you're allowed to do malacha. So you could technically in that way light the Chanukah candles first before doing Havdalah. But right, Havdalah is what marks the end of Shabbat. So it seems a little bit strange. On the other hand, we try and delay Havdalah, right? We don't want to show that we're in a rush for Shabbat to go out. So there might be room to say that actually we should do Havdalah first. We should do the Chanukah candles first and only then do Havdalah. On the other hand, we said Tadir v'Shenot Tadir, right? The thing which is more common, we do Havdalah every week. We do Chanukah candles only once or twice a year on Motzei Shabbat. And therefore, what we have poskim who say this way, and we have poskim who say that way, and essentially we make a compromise between in shul and at home. And that the general custom is that in the Beit Knesset you do the Chanukah candles first, and then you do Havdalah. But at home you do Havdalah first, and then you do the Chanukah candles, and then you've so done it according to everybody. So basically, bottom line is, on Friday, on Erev Shabbat, we light Chanukah candles first, and then we daven mincha first, and then we light Chanukah candles, and then we light Shabbat candles. On Motzei Shabbat, we come and we make Havdalah first, and then we set up we do the Chanukah candles. So that would be the order. So that is essentially in terms of the timing. One more thing I just wanted to speak about briefly, because I've had a lot of questions about this, and there's a lot of confusion about it, is lighting candles not at home. Now, the only place which is agreed where we light candles, as I've said, in order to fulfill the mitzvah, it's mitzvah nar ishu beito, to fulfill the mitzvah of lighting Chanukah candles, it has to be at one's home. And as we've seen, even if a person's not at home, and even if a person wasn't there and didn't see it, if somebody, a member of the household, has lit the candles on their behalf, they fulfilled the mitzvah. Okay? If I'm somewhere else, if I'm at somebody else's home at a Chanukah party and they light the candles, which they should, that's very nice, but I haven't fulfilled my mitzvah. The other place where we light candles is in the shul, in the Beit Knesset. And this is a universal minhag. We light between Mincha and Mariv. And again, you've not fulfilled your mitzvah because it's nar ishu beito. So even if I was the one who lit the candles in shul and I said the bracha on those candles, I still have to go home and I can say another bracha again. It's not a bracha levatala. There is a discussion about shechianu. If the person who lit on the first night in shul says the shechianu, then you can't go home and make a shechianu again. So then you ask somebody else to make the shechianu. Okay. But
we have to wait till the hour to make it.
We have to wait.
But you can't say shechianu, no?
If you've said it in shul already.
Well, the person's lighting. The person's lighting it says shechianu.
Correct. I'm only talking about the person who's lighting. If I heard that somebody else lit in shul and said shechianu, I go home, I make shechianu, that's fine. But the truth is that this minhag is very, very mysterious. It's a universal custom to light the Chanukah in the Beit Knesset. We don't find it anywhere in the Gemara. It's not mentioned. And the Rishonim are all at odds trying to understand why do we light the candles in the shul. So there's about 7 or 8 different reasons that are given. And when you have that many reasons, it's a sign that none of them is actually good enough, and we need to understand. But there are those who say that it's because in that, like making kiddush on a Friday night, those places that have the custom. There used to be visitors would come, and the shul acted as a sort of an inn, and there were people staying there, and it was their home. So for them, they fulfill the mitzvah. According to that reasoning, it's very strange though, because we still like the Chanukah in shul, but many places, in Eretz Yisrael, certainly, we don't make kiddush on a Friday night in shul. Chutz La'aretz, it's still the minhag, but yeah, we don't do that. But that's one. There is another explanation that says, as we've seen, Shata Sakanat, used to be that you light the candles outside where everybody can see them. It's Pirsumei Nisa. And then came a stage where we couldn't do that. We lit inside, so nobody else can see them. So where do you get the Pirsumei Nisa? You get that in the Beit Knesset. Everybody's there together, and you light the candles, Pirsumei Nisa. There are those who say that why do we light candles in the first place? We're remembering the menorah in the Beit HaMikdash. What is the closest thing we have to Beit HaMikdash today? Mikdash Me'at, there is a Beit Knesset. So because of the similarity between the Mikdash and the Mikdash Me'at, we light in the Beit Knesset, etc. The nafkamina between all these reasons would be if a person is at a public event that is not in a shul, you're in the town square, you're in whatever it is, Mesibat Chanukah, wherever, with lots of people. If the reason is Pirsumei Nisa, so there is room to say, wherever there's going to be Pirsumei Nisa, we light the candles with a bracha. And as you all know, that is the minhag of our neighbors. Chabad, right. And again, I say that without any disparagement. That is their minhag. That was the way Rabbi Paskin. Any public event, you light candles, you say the bracha. Okay. Most poskim do not accept that. Most poskim say that we have the minhag in the shul already. That's an established minhag, right? We'll keep it, but we're not going to add to it. We're not going to expand it to other places. And even within the shul, there's a discussion. If you have a shul, take the Graf, for example, where you have a number of different minyanim. Sure. Is it a question on the shul as the building, or is it on the minyan? Because it's Pirsumei Nisa for every minyan. Okay, I don't think that in the Graf they light candles every half an hour, but
they don't like
okay. But there are poskim who say that you have a building, you have a minyan, you have 3 kavua minyanim in the Beit Knesset, one at 7 o'clock, one at 8 o'clock, one at 9 o'clock. So there's an opinion that says each of those minyanim would light the Chanukah candles. There's another opinion that says no, it's on the Beit Knesset, it's not on each minyan, and that's what you would do. But certainly, take our case for example, where you have a shul where there is one minyan. On Motzei Shabbos, there's one minyan in the shul. Okay. And then later on, you're going to come back from an Avamalka or whatever it is. Okay, so if you've already lit the candles earlier, you're not going to light the candles later without a bracha, with a bracha. If you want to light again without a bracha, okay, that's Pirsumei Nisa, that's fine, there's no problem, you can do that. But one would only say the bracha once. And again, if there are people who say, people who are unable to light at home for whatever reason, okay, so you should find a solution because lighting in the shul is not actually going to fulfill your mitzvah because it's not your bayit. Okay, so those are some of the points.
Where are you lighting the water to?
So that's related to the similarity to the mikdash, because the menorah would light all night and was still lit in the morning, and therefore the minhag is that you have the Chanukah in shul that's lit in the morning during the time of the tefillah, but that also is without a bracha in the morning.
If you're going on vacation,
yeah,
and the whole family's going with you on vacation, then obviously you're gonna light where you are. But suppose you're the husband or the wife are going away and there's somebody at home. Is that person on the plane, let's say, whatever, obligated to? Obviously, they can't light on the plane. Are they obligated to? Are they yotzei for the person who's lighting at home?
Someone's at home?
Yeah.
Someone's at home is lighting, then that's
And
the
then
case.
the person.
Yeah, the truth is that according to most poskim, somebody who's on a plane overnight has no chiyuv at all, because that is not a home. There's the discussion, the Marsham and some of the classical poskim talk about somebody who's on a train. And there are those who say that on a train, one's overnight. You can imagine overnight on a sleeper train, you have a separate cabin and it's private. And that could be considered like a home for the night for that person. And therefore there's what to talk about. But most poskim would say a plane is not, you're in the public there. You're only there for a few hours anyway. It's not a home. You have no privacy. In any event, you can't light candles. Rav Asher Weiss, I'll just conclude with this. Rav Asher Weiss has a very interesting tshuva. Somebody asked him about lighting on a plane. So there is a sefer somewhere that published the following. It said, you're on the plane, light the candles, and if the security person comes to extinguish them, he extinguished them, but you lit your candles. So if you know Rav Asher Weiss, you'll know that he says that's ridiculous. He says you can't do that. He says first of all, you're probably not obligated anyway. Second of all, as we've discussed, you have to light candles in a way they can be lit for half an hour if you know somebody's going to extinguish them, so they're not. And he says more than that. He says when you bought your ticket, you were part of the conditions you agreed to in the ticket is that you're not going to set the plane on fire. And therefore, if you go and you start doing it, he says there's nothing to begin with. There is a discussion. We didn't talk about it. What about poskim discuss? What about electric lights? Could you use an electric light for Hanukkah candles? Most poskim say no. Certainly with LED. Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach did say that if it's an inkadesh and bulb, he said you could fulfill the mitzvah that way. He said even with a bracha. So that could be relevant, like you say, somebody's in a hospital or a hotel, something like that, where if there's no possibility to light a real candle, that's there is a Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that one can rely on to say a bracha. Okay.
Just one word, our Beit Knesset, the custom is